The rule number 1 of chapter 1 is stand up straight with your shoulders back, which I'm already not doing.
Walk into the room like you own the place.
The goal is not happiness. The goal is self-improvement, and if we improve ourselves, society as a whole gets better.
It makes a difference on how people perceive you.
Look, bitch, this has been around since before we crawled out of the ocean.
Bingo.
Bingo, bango, bongo. Welcome back, and happy Tuesday, turkeys. How long have we known each other?
We've known each other for 2 decades.
I am not apologizing for who I am or what I like or the people that I love.
How do I be a wife? How do I be a mom? And how do I be myself and all of that? You didn't see that coming, did you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Turkey Month. I'm going to just keep being a witch until I switch over to being a Christmas elf. So
I thought you were going to say a Grinch, because that would have rhymed. No, it wouldn't have. Witch, Grinch. If you're Eminem, it would rhyme.
I think Kanye did some of that too, right?
Every rapper does it, right?
Well, chapter 1, here we go.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. If you didn't listen last week, we are breaking down Jordan B. Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. And before you have major feelings about the name of the author, I don't know, just try listening with an open mind, because that's what I did on an interview, like I said last week. And lo and behold, I found his interview really insightful and helpful for articulating thoughts that I had that did not have the smarts to properly explain.
Mhm.
And then I immediately went and bought the book, and then it turned into Kayla and I saying we should break it down. So that's what's happening. We're still trying to figure out our layout, but basically I'll give everybody a short summary breakdown. We're going to highlight a couple of quotes that we liked, some concepts maybe that we thought were key takeaways for us or impressions, and then if we have any qualms, we always leave room for a qualm. So here we go. Are you ready for a summary?
Yes, ma'am. Lay it on us.
Okay, I'm sorry also to everybody, but I'll be probably reading this from the summary that I typed because it's easier. Okay, so chapter 1. Well, first of all, I guess I should tell you the rule. The rule number 1 of chapter 1 is stand up straight with your shoulders back, which I'm already not doing. Summary. So we learned some background information about creatures in nature, particularly of lobsters, and how they establish their hierarchy in Lobsterlandia. The moral of the story is that defeated lobsters undergo an actual physical change that helps them escape faster, but then also marks them as weaker/targets to the more successful lobsters. The more successful lobsters have the best places to live. They have free pick of the ladies. And in short, a hierarchy is a foundational principle of nature, and we can use this information to our advantage. So if we stand up with our shoulders straight and carry ourselves with confidence, others will be more likely to be confident in our abilities.
I love it.
I'm sorry, I have more. So then he kind of goes on to explain being victimized can create a positive feedback loop which leads to further victimization. And being a victim can become our whole identity. Even our brain chemistry will change and release less serotonin, thus depression, anxiety, and just overall more negativity. And then we already know, and we've talked about this before, that forcing ourselves to smile can change our mood. So it makes sense. It stands to reason that standing up straight and conveying confidence can lead to actual confidence. And we can use that positive feedback loop to our advantage.
I love it. Yes. Should we dive into our thoughts? Because I just have a quick little thought process.
Yeah.
This whole chapter reminded me of when I went through a little bit of a self-help book phase of my life, which was great. I loved it. But it's like what you think about grows. What you say to yourself subconsciously or unconsciously can manifest into reality. The fact that he puts these, helpful insights that can help people get into a better headspace and more confident, he puts them into like a psychological evaluation and lays it out very, very nicely. Man, if you're listening to the audiobook, you cannot fast forward or put it on higher speed, because just the way he talks is so eloquent that's like a little bit above my normal language that I'm listening to. So I'm like, okay, just listen it at 1x and take it all in. But those are the two things that stuck out to me is like what you focus on grows, and it really actually can create a path in either direction. However your brain is wired, it's going to take you in that direction in real life.
Yeah. I love the science because I think a lot of self-help books are coming from people who have anecdotal
Mm-hmm.
or maybe just kind of ancient wisdom, passed down wisdom, which all of that is lovely. But the lobster part was hard for me to get through because it was
Yes,
very scientific.
that was going to be my one of my qualms. It was a long part of the lobster.
It was weighty and it was a lot of lobster description, but it helped. It I understood the purpose.
Yes.
And again, this is somebody who's highly intelligent in the world of academia. And so like you said, it's a change from my semi lowbrow fantasy books that I've been reading with the occasional hot sauce chapters. I it did. It took me a minute. I'm reading at a much slower pace than I normally would be reading. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would be comprehending this at all if I listened because I don't retain audio information nearly as well. But yeah, dude, I like the hard example in nature and then the link of this is evolutionarily a trend. We can see it across multiple different animal species. Even just him comparing how the human brain and brain stem and nervous system, the similarities between that and a crustacean, shit that I would have never thought to know about. And I think at face value, it sort of sounds like you're blaming the victim if you don't actually sit and digest the information. But my takeaway and what I think he was trying to get at is that it's actually a hopeful message because if you have control over the target on your back, or at least the signals that you're sending out to people,
Mm-hmm.
you can change those signals and shrink the target and change your environment and actually change your brain chemistry.
Yes. I love that you brought up
But
that part, the victim part, because well, you hear it nowadays. It's like victimhood or well, I'm not going to get into it too much, but if you feel like you're in a place where that's the narrative that's in your head, it could be valid 1000%, but if you stay there, that's not going to get people very far. Whereas if you change your mindset into, okay, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. I'm not a victim, I can overcome. I'm not a victim, I will be confident. And F everyone that made me feel this way. Like you can't stay there. And I feel like, especially now, because we live in a relatively safe world, it's easy to find things to get you into that mindset. So I like the message there.
mm-hmm. And I think it's really pivotal to recognize that when your perception of the cause of a situation is external, which I think in my field speak, when you have an external locus of control, it's outside of you and it's outside of your control. I think that can lead to a lot more feeling of helplessness and learned helplessness versus if you have an internal locus of control and you feel like you have the ability to change your situation, that provides hope and I think the will to want to do something,
Mm-hmm.
versus it's the message of stuff's happening to me and I can't control it versus I have the ability to change my course. And I mean, you can see just in dealing and talking with people that you see somebody who is victimized in childhood and it becomes this pattern that they have learned behavior, maybe in some sense. I can also see people, or I've seen people where they become a victim and then it's like police smell them from a mile away.
Yeah.
And it's hard to articulate exactly what it is that causes that to happen. And it's not the person's fault for being bullied. The bully still needs to be held accountable, but we don't have control over anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just saying it's society or it's this or it's that. All of those factors can still be true, but you can also change a significant amount of the way that your life is and your perspective. And I would argue a more hopeful and positive perspective if you take control over and accountability over what is within your bubble.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's hard if people are so deep in that mindset of this has happened to me and I don't have control, so I am this. It's like almost becomes their identity. I feel like if you were to hear this in that state, it would almost be a little agitating or almost like, how dare you? This happened to
Mm-hmm.
me. How can you not understand?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's putting onus back on the person, which could be slightly off-putting at first, but when you really dive into it, it's just like you said, a hopeful message of you don't have to stay there. You can rewire your brain patterns and your thoughts and become a completely different person, which brings me to the whole dissolving brains thing. Now, I looked it up and people were saying, does this really happen? But the fact that he was talking about, um, hold on, this is one of the quotes that I wrote down. Where she be? Okay. Well, it's not the quote, but it's basically just the overall part of that whole area of the lobster part. It says that lobster brains dissolve when socially dominated, and then they regrow new subordinate brains. So that was interesting. Like if two lobsters are in a basically a dick fight over a piece of cave that they found or whatever, and the one that loses, it doesn't just lose, even if it's the second man on the totem pole, it's no more second now. It's all the way at the bottom because now he just feels like he's completely lost. And according to this, I guess when I first heard it, it was like, wow, they just completely dissolved their brain and regrow one. There's probably some different scientific ways that this happens, but they're basically shifting their chemicals into saying, I'm not top dog anymore. Low. I am just a little measly lobster who doesn't get the girls and doesn't get the land. And they probably end up dying sooner. So
Yeah.
that was
No,
interesting to me.
it was so interesting. I was fascinated.
It's like, damn.
I know. And this whole concept of, to me, it felt like, okay, we're establishing why this is true and we're establishing examples in nature. Here's what it could mean for you as a human. And for me, the message is kind of fake it till you make it, like be confident. And even if you don't feel like you are, if you stand up straight and you have your shoulders back, you enter a room differently that way.
Yes.
Versus if you're like slurming in the corner.
Yes.
It's the difference of, this is a ridiculous example. It's the difference of if you're watching Harry Potter and what's his face? The creepy professor.
Snape.
Yeah, it's the difference of Snape like slurming into a room, like hunchy
Uh-huh.
and slouchy and looking at the ground versus Longbeard.
Dumbledore.
Thank you. Versus Dumbledore walking in with his head up and his shoulders back and speaking confidently.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I have experienced this for sure at my old job, knowing that I was a young female graduating with a master's in social work, coming into a law enforcement field, having to work around people who were way more intelligent than I was, trying not to argue, but having to make a case for my position in a courtroom of attorneys and presidentially appointed judges and real law enforcement,
A
and
lot.
even just my coworkers who definitely did not want me there when I started. I was like, well, if I look like I don't think that I know what I'm doing, they are going to run all over me.
Mm-hmm.
So just standing up and being like, nope, this is mine. This is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I necessarily recommend this, but I have a thing where I don't ever call people ma'am or sir at work.
You
Ever.
don't?
No.
Interesting.
Never for any reason at any point because it felt like I immediately subordinated myself to them.
Like they were the authority figure kind of over you. Okay. That makes
And if
sense.
I was in a setting where we were supposedly all supposed to be having, equal conversation, I would always be respectful. I'm not gonna curse at a judge or say something
Yeah, of
off-putting,
course.
I'm not going to interrupt them. There were things that I would do to be very intentional about how I spoke and to be very professional and just say, well, in my opinion or from my perspective, and things like that to kind of defer because obviously they were the authority in the room on some level. But especially with other agents or with attorneys where all of us are really supposed to be on the same level of totem pole, I just wasn't going to do it. And I kind of feel like it helped because I noticed that I spoke to people in a way that was respectful, but also did not subordinate myself in the way that I spoke to them. And I ended up having kind of friendly, jovial, kind of jokey relationships with them outside of, the actual hearings. And some of my coworkers who weren't that way and who had been in the field for a very, very long time did not have those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really realize that it was weird until I would, go into chambers or something and I'd be cutting up and they would be having a heart attack.
It's
I
like
don't know. It worked.
I quoted Boyd yesterday, or not yesterday, last week with his piece of advice. I have another piece of advice from my father.
Get it, Boyd.
He always said, well, you know him personally, but he said, whenever you're feeling like nervous or whatever the circumstance is, walk into the room like you own the place. Oh my God, he said it so many times, which I love the context. And sometimes I'm like, lordy tordy, but it does help a lot in situations because if you act like it and you have the confidence, even inside you're like, I'm stressed, it makes a difference on how people perceive you.
For sure. And I used to always wear a suit jacket.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had to wear a jacket, obviously, actual in court. But just going into work, into the office, I always made sure I was dressed extremely professionally. My shit was clean, like not wrinkled. I would always put my hair up in a tight bun, even just making myself look put together.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt put together, even if I felt like an internal mess. And social work, I don't know where this came from, but I think it's just a thing in school or of the field because we all talk about when you're in that role and people are looking to you and in a ton of situations, you just need to be calm so they can mirror calm. It doesn't even have to be real. We always talk about like a duck on a lake. It looks like they're
Mm.
just gliding along on the top of the water, but their legs are like
Yeah.
underneath, just fucking frantic. It doesn't mean lie. It doesn't mean bullshit. If you don't know the answer to something, you need to say, I don't know. Let me check. I'll get back with you. But don't apologize for that either.
Mm-mm.
Just mirror being steadfast to people. They'll reflect it back to you. It can change the energy in a room so much. But I love what Boyd said. I used to do that. I'd listen to pump up like rap music on my way into work and get like an attitude and then come in that way.
I love it. I
I
love it.
mean, those bitches just really thought I was going to be a
Little
flop.
pushover. Yeah.
Yes. Which then, it's like, use that to be like, you don't know me, motherfucker. Okay.
You don't know me.
All right. Any other takeaways for you?
No, I think the only other takeaways are these couple of quotes that I've got.
Take it away, Johnny. You read a quote. I'll find my first one.
Okay, this is a very short one. This is the one I was trying to type up so I didn't forget while I was driving, so I don't recommend. He said, put your desires forward as if you had the right to them. I was like, damn, boy. Like, it's so true. We kind of were just circling around that topic, but I have the right to desires. I have the right
Mm-hmm.
to say the things I want to say. I have the right to be here and take up space. We've talked about that kind of stuff before, but yeah, putting your desires forward as if you had the right to them. The way he phrased it just kind of hit me, and I just thought that was a really cool quote.
I like that. I like that a lot. And it's short and simple,
Mm-hmm.
unlike what I'm about to read. Okay. I don't know. My note on the sidebar, I love writing notes.
I
I
know
have
you
a whole
do.
hierarchy of how you can't see this if you're listening, but I like parenthesis around a thing and then underline the actual thing. This goes back to my Bible study
I
days
was
ago where I used
just
to do
going to
that.
say, this looks like your Bible.
It is. This is exactly, I swear this formed. Okay. Okay. So this is definitely in the beginning in Lobsterlandia. Anyway, he's kind of talking about Darwin, like a Darwinian perspective and all of that. But he says the dominance hierarchy however social or cultural it might appear, has been around for some 500 million years. It's permanent, it's real. The dominance hierarchy is not capitalism, it's not communism either, for that matter. It's not the military industrial complex, it's not the patriarchy, that disposable, malleable, arbitrary cultural artifact. It's not even a human creation, not in the most profound sense. It is instead a near eternal aspect of the environment, and much of what is blamed on these more ephemeral manifestations is a consequence of its unchanging existence. Some big words.
Yeah, this I kind of had to read this chapter twice, damn near, to kind of take it all in. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just really like that. We change the word and we label things differently, but this is why he used the lobster example, I think, is just to say, look, bitch, this has been around since before we crawled out of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It is old and deeply seated within our lizard brains. So we can stop trying to blame other people and other phenomena. It's gone by a different name in a multitude or across a multitude of generations, and just say it is what it is, and how can we now use it to our advantage?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great quote. I would not have been able to write that out while I was driving.
Big words.
Okay, my next one goes back to kind of what we were talking about as far as victimhood. We always say in our line of field, like, don't catastrophize something, even though it feels like a catastrophe to them, or our situation feels like it's just like the end of the world. But if you don't catastrophize something, you're more clear-headed to find the solution. It's just like Daniel Tiger. When you're feeling mad and you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. Okay, then you can think clearly. Anyway, going back to Jordan Peterson. Can you tell I have a toddler? Standing up, this is the quote. Standing up means voluntarily accepting the burden of being. Okay, I'm going to read that part again. Standing up means voluntarily accepting the burden of being. Your nervous system responds in an entirely different manner when you face the demands of life voluntarily. You respond to a challenge instead of bracing for a catastrophe. Which also, we think about a car crash. Weird example just came to mind, but like if you look in the rearview mirror and you know you're about to get rear-ended and you tighten up, you're likely going to have a worse physical reaction because you're so tight and you're preparing for a catastrophe versus, that's just a reflex typically. But in the context of this, if you were to be relaxed and driving and may just not be aware and you get hit, you're more likely to be flexible and be okay. I just like that. Like standing up means you're accepting the burden of being, which this life is really hard. And life just like it sucks sometimes. There's ups and downs, nothing stays the same. But you can use that to your advantage because I was just telling my child in the car when we were going to daycare, I said, nothing stays the same in life. And that's a good thing because when it's a happy moment, you are more grateful for it because you know it's not going to last. And if it's a bad moment, you can have relief that it's not going to last forever either. And it'll pass.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let me buzz through this. So he also talks about, we didn't really touch on it because it's more in the preface or the intro, but he talks a lot about chaos versus order and maintaining the balance between the two. I think was it the Taoist? I don't even know if it's a religion. I guess it is. Philosophy. Anyway, they talk about chaos and order as two different snakes or two opposing forces. I have my snake earrings on. Shout out. Anyway. Here he says, anxiety and depression cannot be easily treated if the sufferer has unpredictable daily routines. The systems that mediate negative emotion are tightly tied to the properly cyclical circadian rhythms. That's just a good advice for life. Have a routine, people.
I agree. And here's my last one, a good advice for life. Attend carefully to your posture. Quit drooping and hunching around. You spoke to this about your job. Speak your mind. Oh, and here's my little mini quote in this. Put your desires forward as if you had a right to them. Walk tall and gaze forthrightfully ahead. Dare to be dangerous. Encourage the serotonin to flow plentifully through neural pathways, desperate for its calming influence. Crazy. It's so true. Like our nervous system and our vagus nerve, if you will,
Yeah,
really does
dude.
affect body and mind together.
And shout out if yours is wildly out of whack. There may be things that you have to do to recalibrate it. I highly recommend EMDR.
And
Okay. Next, he kind of also in this chapter, which we haven't touched on a ton, but talking about chaos versus order, talking about tyranny versus anarchy. And
mm,
again, if you have too much order, then it becomes a dictatorship, like Kaylee and counting blueberries. And if you have too much chaos, then there's too much instability and there's no progress can be made. Okay, anyway. Those who are only or merely compassionate and self-sacrificing, parentheses, and naive and exploitable, cannot call forth the genuinely righteous and appropriately self-protective anger necessary to defend themselves. If you can bite, you generally don't have to.
good way to put it.
Because I think that gets mixed up a lot, especially in helping professions, where we don't want to be angry, we don't want to step on anybody's toes, we don't want to say anything, but the sun is really in my eyes. But sometimes you have to be angry because, just like we talked about before, if you've been victimized or you're a victim of abuse or anything, negative attention, whatever the case may be, sometimes anger is the appropriate response to that. And getting mad and saying, no, this isn't right. And having the ability to call that out and defend yourself or defend other people. Let me read through these really fast. I'm not going to yip yap about them. This is short. Circumstances can change. So can you.
Ooh, yes.
Amazing. Your nervous system responds in an entirely different manner when you face the demands of life voluntarily. You respond to a challenge instead of bracing for catastrophe. You already said that,
Love it.
but it
I
was
figured
worth
we may
repeating.
have some repeats.
The way, the Taoist path of life, is represented by or exists on the border between the twin serpents, which are chaos and order. The way is the path of proper being, which I loved. And then he said, we eternally inhabit order, surrounded by chaos. We eternally occupy known territory, surrounded by the unknown. We experience meaningful engagement when we mediate appropriately between them.
Mm. It's like, well, it's not entirely like, but I like the phrase firm but fair.
Yeah. Yes. It's this being able to hold two opposing forces and tolerate it. Okay. This was a good one. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. Just, okay. Order is not enough. You can't just be stable and secure and unchanging because there are still vital and important new things to be learned. Nonetheless, chaos can be too much. You can't tolerate being swamped and overwhelmed beyond your capacity to cope while you are learning what you still need to know. Thus, you need to place one foot in what you have mastered and understood and the other in what you are currently exploring and mastering. Then you have positioned yourself where the terror of existence is under control and you are secure, but where you are also alert and engaged. That is where there is something new to master and some way that you can be improved. That is where meaning is to be found.
Mm. That's a big one. I like that one.
Now I think I may have accidentally jumped ahead into rule 2. So we are just going to stop right there. Let me just finish with this last thing because this was from the internal dialogue. What am I saying? The intro.
Mm.
Okay, last thing. This is from the intro, like I said, but just bear with me because I think this is a good way to end. So, order and chaos are the yang and yin of the famous Taoist symbols, two serpents head to tail. Order is the white masculine serpent. Chaos is its black feminine counterpart. The black dot in the white dot in the black indicate the possibility of transformation. Just when things seem secure, the unknown can loom unexpectedly and large. Conversely, just when everything seems lost, new order can emerge from catastrophe and chaos. For the Taoists, meaning is to be found on the border between the ever-entwined pair. To walk that border is to stay on the path of life, the divine way, and that's much better than happiness.
I love.
What's really hitting to me is just this whole idea of it's not your job in life to be happy. That was kind of, I guess that's my overall summary takeaway from this first chapter and from the intro is the goal is not happiness. The goal is self-improvement. And if we improve ourselves, society as a whole gets better. It's sort of that 10 to the days and the years will take care of themselves concept. but we don't need to be patrolling what everybody else is doing, and we don't need to be blaming our circumstances on what everybody else is doing. We need to just be doing what we need to be doing.
Bingo. Yep.
Bingo, bango, bongo. Anyway, any last wrap ups?
No, we've really dived in. I don't have much to say. The lobster part was very, very interesting. It was very heavy, it's a good word to use, but it brought a lot of meaning and context to current society. And I love this chapter. I can't wait for number 2. Chapter 2.
I know, me either.
Which should we preview again? Yeah, what's the
let's
rule?
read. Chapter 2. Rule 2. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. If my helping professionals out there would just read that. And probably a lot of moms, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, well, I don't know. Any last thoughts? Any last wrap-ups?
We should give them the tip.
Yeah, it's true. We should. Okay, well, guys, obviously our tip, again, this week is to read the book. I don't know how else to tell it to you. It's just helpful. But also... Nope, you go.
I was just going to say, and if, again, you don't agree with everything this particular person says, that's okay. It's good to open your mind and read a full-length contextual book of his, you know?
Yeah.
Open your brain.
That's what I was going to say. If you don't have time for the book, his podcast is the Jordan Peterson podcast, so you can listen to him on there, and he interviews different people. You can also go listen to him be interviewed on numerous different podcasts. So if there's a host that you like, I think Theo Vaughn just recently interviewed him. If not, Instagram wants me to listen. But go listen to the source explain themselves and their thought processes instead of reading somebody else's interpretation, or instead of listening to sound bites. Go listen to something in its entirety and withhold judgment until you're done. And we're obviously not here to critique him as a person. We're just summarizing helpful things from a book and doing a virtual book club. So I don't know, join us. Until next week.
Love you, bye.
I love you, bye. Bum, bum, bum.
That was fun.